So we're going to start scraping each one of these fish. All of them have lesions, so just some tissue. These are something called sites. They're flesh-eating protozoa.
That's why they were scratching with the copper.
Yeah. So see how the scales are falling off? See, his lesioning is extreme.
If you've been following Polo Reef, then you might know that the team, they don't take any chances. The robust quarantine systems and protocols that Andrew built are where all fish begin their journey. The quarantine is a place to monitor, treat, and prevent any outbreaks from entering the display tanks. And today, it's a prime example of why having strict quarantine protocols in place matters.
So today we're going through quarantine system 4 and 5. We've had a bunch of different wrasses added in from a couple different shipments. Some of them are showing some lesioning, some ulceration, some desquamation. So we're going to start scraping each one of these fish. All of them have lesions, some different, some ulcerations, and again, some desquamation or peeling of the skin. So I just want to take a look at that first. So just some tissue. So that's called desquamation. That's one a classic hallmark of something called Brooklynella.
Alex the vet grabs a skin sample to take a closer look. What he's looking for is Brooklynella, a deadly disease that causes skin irritation to the fish, and it spreads very quickly. It's resistant to copper, making a misdiagnosis very costly. Under the microscope, Brooklynella can be identified as having an anterior notch as well as resembling a potato chip. While looking for Brooklynella, Alex the vet makes a grave discovery in the form of a pear shape.
These are something called sites. They're flesh-eating protozoa that are notoriously hard to treat and notoriously lethal. It's ironically the disease that got me into fish medicine. Depends on lesions. These fish are euthanized and sent for PCR. So then we know what we're looking at, and also just academically.
After scraping a couple fish, it was determined that the quarantine has both urinema and Brooklynella, a deadly combination. To further investigate, Alex dims the light to get a closer look.
So right now I'm doing a variation of kind of something called dark field microscopy. Sometimes it just highlights different things. Right now it makes them a little bit easier to see, and it looks cool. Finding this organism, like 1 or 2, isn't like an abnormal thing. Again, I think it's ubiquitous in the environment. It's when we start having an outbreak of it. So now that there's, several thousand of them on each fish, that's when it's more of like an abnormal event. The problem is there's no successful treatments for it, unless it's like really, really extensive, like hospital care. That's the only time that I've ever been successful with it. The problem is, again, it changes depending on if it's only external or if it's actually inside the fish as well. If it's in the fish, it's going to eat it from the inside out, and all the topical medication will never change how many protozoa are within the fish itself. This is where a disease that I'd like to experiment with, because I have some ideas in terms of medications that haven't been tried in the past, but that's up to Andrew if he wants to go down that road.
After his discovery, he breaks the sad news to Andrew.
Both stacking together, Brooke and Urinema are just a horrible combination. So we'll get
That's why they were scratching with the copper.
Yeah.
They weren't scratching because of
The copper.
ankle velvet or
No.
This was.
But we're going to set up a bath for him now. He also has an ulceration, so I'm just going to close him up as well.
Okay. Yeah, we'll get the CP in there fast.
Now that the issues have been identified, the procedures can start. The first thing he'll do is give the fish a bath to see if that does anything to help.
He's going to hang out here for a little bit. And if we're going to scrape them again, if they're gone, we go, okay. If they're not gone, then back to the drawing board.
After letting the fish bathe in the medication, Alex scrapes the fish again to see if any progress has been made. Unfortunately, there's more bad news.
So see how the scales are falling off? Because his skin is now in contact with the salt water, he is hypotonic to the hypertonicity of the salt water. So then the fluid goes to solute, more solute than the salt water. So the fluid goes from inside him out through his muscle into the salt water, and essentially it's going to turn him into a prune. Eventually, there's not enough fluid for the cardiac and kidney function, and he passes from heart failure and kidney failure. So we're actually going to humanely euthanize this guy and send him down to the university for full necropsy.
Losing a fish is never easy. It's a difficult decision, but instead of letting the fish suffer, Alex the vet will euthanize the fish and send it to a university for further research. At Polo Reef, one of the main missions is to educate. And today is a prime example of how Andrew can help further the hobby by sending ill fish to be studied further.
Doesn't hurt, doesn't stress him out, works very quickly.
After the fish is euthanized, Alex takes pictures for record keeping. Next, they will inject formaldehyde to preserve the fish for research.
This is formalin. It's a preservative. It preserves the tissue. And what I'm doing is getting it in him. So now the inside of him is going to get fixed as well. Because again, if it's only the outside that gets fixed, the inside would autolyze. So I just want to stop that autolyzation. But again, without damaging him. So he's going through the vent. We're putting meds in the entire system 4-5. We're adding chloroquine phosphate. Yeah, I used to lean more towards formalin for Brooklynella, but we've seen really good results with the chloroquine. And mechanistically, it makes sense that it would work. So I've been a decent advocate of it right now, just because I like to limit formalin use overall. Formalin's a carcinogenic compound, and I don't want the team exposed to it. I don't want the fish exposed to it unless we have to. Again, the probability of the ones we scraped that were really heavily infested surviving, low, but hopefully we can prevent it from spreading to anybody else.
If one fish is infected, it could mean others are as well. As a preventative measure, Alex decides to check the rest of the fish in the quarantine system.
It's a pretty significant lesion.
And as expected, he finds other fish showing signs of infection.
So he has the same protozoa that the other fish had, just a lot less than I would expect. I would expect for a lesion that deep for him to be covered in them. The problem is you can't squeeze them too hard either. We're gonna take photos of the lesion. So now we have like a case of this fish, of what was seen on microscopy, pictures of the lesion, and then it gets sent down for histopath. So now we can actually see what those organisms did to the tissue. Again, we can see a really deep ulceration, but again, what's happening internally. And a lot of times uronema or the schistocytocytes aren't only an external disease, it's an internal disease as well, but no one really has gone through depths in determining what it does internally. So if we know how things change internally, then potentially we could treat or prevent those reactions.
Luckily, the other fish didn't have the infection as bad and should make a full recovery. Alex collects more data from the infected fish to research it further.
Again, the problem with it, that's why these diseases are so bad, is because once they reach a certain point, you can't save them. But if we can learn about how the disease process works, you can hopefully treat it better.
Andrew pops in to chat with Alex about the quarantine issues.
That side, there was some really significant, like, lesioning.
I thought it wasn't bacterial.
Uronema.
Okay.
Yeah.
See, that's why I don't guess anymore.
No one gets into this reef keeping hobby to lose fish or coral, but sometimes it happens. When Polo Reef loses livestock, it's not taken lightly, and Andrew uses the opportunity for research. It's his goal that what happens here at Polo Reef is used as a lesson to push this rewarding hobby even further. We hope you all learned something today. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell for everything Polo Reef. Until next time.